It's free agency time. NFL 2025 is kicking off, and we got all the reactions to all the news, the trades, the releases, the signings, you name it. We got it. I'm Josh, no Joe, no Ryan this week, so I had to call in some reinforcements, and you've probably seen him here on this show before. This is his very first time on the show, way back when. His first time ever on a podcast. And we just love him so much that we keep bringing him back. Yes, it is Hutchinson Brown from Footballguys and DLF. He's going to help me break down all of the free agent signings, so stay tuned. Welcome into No Punt Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. I am your host today, Joshua Hudson, and I don't think for as long as I've done this, this might only be like the second time that I have hosted this show. So this is going to be really interesting. But thankfully, I have one of the smartest people in this industry. I absolutely love him to death, Mr. Hutchinson Brown from Footballguys, DLF. Hutch, come a long way since your first time on a podcast with us way back when, buddy.
Oh man, dude, I went back a couple weeks ago and watched that first episode. You know, it's unbelievable, dude.
Good times,
it's
man.
Unbelievable. Like not just like the way I've grown as an analyst and as a speaker, but like the just genuine the way I looked. Like, dude.
Well, you were what, 14 years old on that podcast?
I was just turning 15. I think I was 14 at the time I did the show with you guys. Yeah. And now I'm 18, approaching 19 in July. It's been a long time, but man,
you're still a young buck.
Quite a journey.
Well,
yes, sir.
As previously mentioned in the intro, we are going to be reacting to all of the NFL free agency news, trades, releases, you name it. It's probably on the show sheet. We left off a bunch too, because we mainly just focus on the offensive side of the ball. So if you're listening, come join us over on YouTube. Join us in the chat, as Caesar here does every single week. Cheers to you as well. If you haven't and you're watching for the first time, hit the like on the video, subscribe to the channel. We're always doing fun stuff. This is kind of our quiet time of the year, but now the free agency is kicking off. Expect to see some mock drafts popping up and hopefully some more dynasty content. So with that, Hutch, let's get into all the free agent stuff because there's so much of it. And I want to start with some of the trades here. And obviously, I have a whole bunch that's been laid out. We'll break it down into some questions and, you can kind of react to different news, notes, all that good stuff. But the Seahawks were really busy out of the gate, trading away Geno Smith to the Raiders for a third-round pick. And then I believe it was Monday, they traded star wide receiver DK Metcalf to the Steelers for a second-round pick and a late-round pick swap. Pittsburgh then turns around and signs DK Metcalf to a 4-year, $132 million extension with a total deal in new money and all that coming out to 5 years, $150 million, $30 million guaranteed. So I want to start right here with Seattle. What are they doing? Like what I get Geno's old. Don't get me wrong. Like I get it. He wasn't great last year. There really wasn't a whole lot on this market, and you made this trade before free agency started. So if you're Seattle, what's going through your head right here?
Yeah, honestly, the Seattle offseason has been incredibly intriguing because we'll talk about this later probably in the show. But the Seattle Seahawks, they traded away Geno Smith, traded away DK Metcalf, released Tyler Lockett, a couple of veterans on defense have been gone. And it seems like they're just tearing apart their team, complete rebuild, which I honestly don't mind. Like, I don't hate that idea. But, I'm sorry about that, Joshua. But the problem is, they decided to go out and sign Sam Darnold, a veteran, to a 3-year, $110 million deal. That I don't think that screams rebuild or tear apart the team and start over. Like, it's just the offseason has been very mixed for them. It's a really like the first half I was fine, and then Sam Darnold got signed, and I was like, what are they doing? This makes no sense anymore. Like
Yeah,
it's
and
been
that
a
was
weird
kind of my
offseason.
thought. I mean, it's a very similar deal to what the Bucs gave Baker Mayfield, right? Like the Bucs gave Baker 3 for 100. Seattle gives Mayfield 3 for 100.5. Got to get that extra 500,000 in there to show who's better, right? But and really that's what it is. It's a deal that's mainly front loaded. So if he goes to Seattle and absolutely bombs, they likely end up with a high draft pick, and then they can turn around and draft their quarterback of the future and move off of Darnold, right? Like that's kind of what it feels like. But you're leaving the door open the same way the Bucs did with Baker, that maybe 2024 wasn't a fluke, and maybe this is the new Sam Darnold, right? Like they've got a young hotshot offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak. He's bringing in some of his guys, his system. He wants to go with more of a fullback, kind of out of the Shanahan mold. All these different things that we saw Darnold sort of succeed with in Minnesota, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now they got to get him weapons because he had Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson. Now in Seattle, Darnold's only got JSN, right? So I don't know.
Yeah,
It feels like Seattle's still got a lot of work to do.
yeah, and you also have the offensive line problems. When you look at next gen stats, Sam Darnold held onto the football one of the most times. Some of the most time in the league per snap. Like he was holding on the ball very long. That Minnesota offensive line did a very good job protecting him, and he also had a great defense. He was constantly playing with a lead. Seattle doesn't have that. Like they don't have anything. Sam Darnold was basically being taken to this team and saying, "You are the guy. Like you are supposed to be our guy that can win us games." I feel like Sam Darnold, as great as he was in Minnesota last year, was more a production of the system that Minnesota had and the talent that they had around him. I don't think Sam Darnold can change a franchise like Seattle is looking to ask him to do. I think this is going to end badly. I really do. I am not confident in this at all.
I'm with you. But let's talk about the flip side of that. Let's go to the Raiders and Geno Smith, because to me, the biggest thing here was the headline that I saw that said the Raiders were considering Geno Smith their, quote, quarterback of the future. Did they miss the memo and forget that he's like 36 years old?
I don't get it, man. I mean, Geno Smith, like, the thing is, like, he's 36 years old, but he's not like a great quarterback either. He's been fine. He's been totally serviceable. He's able to get you to 500. This guy's not taking you to a deep playoff run. This guy's not winning playoff games. Like, it's just, he doesn't have those capabilities. Like, he's proven to me that he is an average quarterback, and that's fine if you want a bridge quarterback. The Raiders have done this for a while now, getting bridge quarterbacks and being in quarterback health. They want to do it for another year. Fine, but I've seen the rumors too, Josh. Like, don't sign this guy to a long-term deal. Like that is going to be the end of you. That will be like
he
the
wants
Derek
like
Carr
40
Saints
mil a
deal.
year too.
Yeah, no, that's
That's
crazy. Like that would be the Derek Carr deal all over again. That would be disastrous for the Raiders. But for now, like looking at the receiving weapons on this team with Geno Smith, you can at least give a sigh of relief for Brock Bowers, knowing that he has a veteran established quarterback that can at least get him the football. I mean, he was fine last year with the trash they had at quarterback last year, but just sigh of relief knowing that it's not going to be a rookie. It's not Aiden O'Connell. It's not a random mess. It's an established veteran. And then Jacoby Myers also has some potential too in fantasy if the Raiders don't add any significant players at wide receiver.
So they go and they get Geno. They still have Bowers, still have Jacoby Myers. Clearly, they still need a running game. They had the worst running game in the NFL. If you're the Raiders, are you taking Ashton Jeanty at 6 overall?
I don't think it's the wise pick. I think with how deep this running back class is, you can get someone on day 2 or day 3 that will be helpful for you and will give you a good run game. There are plenty of great running backs in this class. I think it's better to take offensive lineman or find a great defensive player at 6. But the problem is they're the Las Vegas Raiders, and this is Pete Carroll, and they want a flashy player. I think it's very realistic for them to go Jeanty at 6. I would not do that.
Say, you're a fantasy football analyst. The correct answer is yes, they go get Ashton Jeanty.
Yes, yeah. The fantasy football mind of me wants them to say yes, go get Jeanty, but I don't think it's a smart move for them as a team. I think elsewhere.
I also wouldn't hate Tet McMillan here either. I know, like I've seen a lot of mocks where McMillan is kind of sliding into that like the 20s range, which I get from a standpoint of this isn't a very deep wide receiver class. And that could ultimately, it can go one of two ways, right? Like it'll push the higher end of these guys forward because there's some wide receiver starving teams, but also too, teams will be like, look, this isn't a good class. We're going to take value somewhere else and just hope that these guys make it to where we're at, maybe in the top of the second round, mid-second, wherever it is. So, but I think with what Tet offers and how he can pair with Bowers and Myers, like they have very different skill sets. And I think that may not be the worst idea. Again, maybe you don't take him at 6. Maybe you look to trade back, get more assets, because you do have to rebuild that defense in, what Pete Carroll wants to do. But I don't know, just an idea. Thought I'd throw it out there. But yeah, staying on the wide receiver train.
I was saying they need a wide receiver. I'm going to agree with you. They need to add something. But 10 million 6 would be 10 million 6 would be a fun one.
Yeah. Staying on the wide receiver train, and speaking of big wide receivers, DK going to Pittsburgh. How do you think DK Metcalf and George Pickens are going to coexist? Because I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to ask me who are the 2 most hot-headed receivers in football, I'm telling you it's George Pickens and DK Metcalf. Like, these two constantly get in fights with DBs. They constantly get penalties thrown for them. They constantly are frustrating for their NFL offenses and their coaching staffs because they can't handle themselves on the field. And now you've put both of them on the same roster. You're guaranteeing a 15-yard penalty like every other play. It's unreasonable that this is a reality right now. To be perfectly honest, I don't think it'll last either. I think Pickens is on the move. I think they're going to send Pickens to a team. I think that the Steelers have done this for a while now, where Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, where they keep these guys for a while, these little hotheads, diva kind of wide receivers. They keep them for a little bit, and they trade them away for a second or for a package to a dumb team that's willing to take them on, and it doesn't work. Like, it just doesn't work for that team. Remember when the Bears, they traded like a second for Chase Claypool, wasn't it, right? And that was an absolute bust. That was a disaster. And then Carolina traded for Deontay Johnson, and that worked for a little bit, but not really. That was also a bit of a disaster. I think there's going to be a team dumb enough that hasn't gotten a wide receiver yet, that doesn't love the wide receivers in the draft. They're going to be like, we'll give you a 2 for Pickens. He put up 1,100 yards last year. We'll give you a 2 for him. And I don't think it's going to work out. But I'm in the boat of one of Pickens is going to move on this offseason. They gave Metcalf a bag. And I think Pickens is probably frustrated that he's not the clear-cut number 1 now.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this and I look at the history of Arthur Smith offenses that really don't have a 1A, 1B type wide receivers. Like, they just don't throw the football enough to facilitate that kind of passing volume. So, like, they made their bed. They're basically saying, Metcalf, you're our guy. So then it becomes Pickens, who's kind of played that role. Like, both of these guys are very downfield heavy threats. They have a ton of speed, not the greatest route runners. Honestly, their skill sets are pretty redundant, and you don't need that in an Arthur Smith offense. So that tells me that Pickens is probably on the move. But for the sake of argument and the sake of fantasy football talk, what could this look like in terms of wide receiver rankings if they both stay on the, and keep in mind, they don't have a quarterback right now.
It's really tough. I was about to say, it's extremely dependent on who the quarterback is. Right now, you have Russell Wilson going on visits with the Browns and the Giants. That could end up going that way. You have Aaron Rodgers available. Jameis Winston is available. Because, look, I'll just say this. If it's Jameis Winston throwing to George Pickens and DK Metcalf, like, I'm fine with those two as top 24 wide receivers. Definitely. If not like top 20, top 15. Like, those two are very talented. They can do a lot of things. And Jameis Winston might throw 50 touchdowns and 15 receptions in that offense. Like, he will chuck it down the field. We love it for fantasy. He will throw it to them for every single play. He'll throw it deep every play. He does not care. This would be a perfect Jameis Winston situation for offense. But if it's Aaron Rodgers, if it's Kirk Cousins, I'm gonna have a hard time drafting either of them.
All right.
Kirk Cousins especially would be gross. I would really not like that.
Now, staying on the side where we both think that George Pickens does eventually get moved, it may not be now, maybe it's a draft day kind of thing. Where do you think is the most ideal landing spot for him?
Ooh, an ideal landing spot? Well, I mean, it's mean to say.
I mean, there's a lot of wide receiver needy teams, and obviously
there are a lot of wide receiver needy teams. The mean thing to say is nowhere, because I don't like Pickens as a wide receiver for my quarterback. He brings an attitude to the locker room that is not healthy. He just brings an attitude that's not okay. Like, I want to send him to Carolina and give Bryce Young a weapon. I don't want to mess up Bryce Young, man. Bryce Young is a fun guy. He seems like having a great time. I don't think George Pickens would mesh with Bryce Young. I don't think those two energies would really mesh. I honestly, I have no idea where I would send him. Honestly, like there's no team where I'd be like, yes, Pickens went to this team. This is perfect. I mean, maybe wherever Aaron Rodgers goes.
Send him to Green
Aaron Rodgers
Bay.
and Pickens could be crazy together. Send him where?
Send him to Green Bay.
Green Bay. All right. Okay. Yeah, send him to Green Bay.
Send him to Green Bay.
Send him to
Green
Bay.
They desperately need a wide receiver.
They need a wide receiver. I mean, Josh Jacobs said so. They need it.
Yeah, right. Raiders could be fun.
The Raiders could be interesting as well. Yeah, the Raiders need that wide receiver help. And they would be a great deep threat to add on to Jacoby Myers, who works a lot underneath, and Brock Bowers, who's just your overall like dominant.
Yeah, and I think Pete Carroll's the kind of head coach that he can corral.
Might be able to manage him. Yeah,
personalities. I mean, look what he did with Marshawn Lynch, even DK. Like he took a chance on DK, right? So
yeah,
I think that would be an interesting spot as well, and that's kind of where I think that Pickens is probably on the move on like day 2 of the draft, right? So
yeah, it would be like a round 2 pick or round 2 and a 5th swap or something like that.
Yeah,
it'd be similar to the DK trade probably.
I agree. Yep. All right. I want to highlight a few of these other trades, and then we got a dynasty question in the chat that I want to bring up as well. Instead of releasing Christian Kirk as the Jaguars initially planned, the Texans swoop in and offer them a 7th round pick to pair Christian Kirk with Nico Collins. Quickly, how do you like this fit with CJ Stroud and Kirk and Nico?
I think it's phenomenal. I absolutely love it. CJ Stroud is really good with timing and finding the open holes in zones. It's something he's always been good at. When it's look at college, we look at his NFL days, he's great at timing throws. And Christian Kirk is all about that life, that short intermediate range, finding the hole zone, being at the right spot at the right time. He's a veteran in this league. He knows how to find the right spots to be. And you pair that with a Nico Collins, who on the outside is just a dominant threat. Like you can't play single high safety against Nico Collins. Like that's not fair. You have to play cover 2. You have to send 2-3 guys back there to watch out for Nico Collins. And as a result, you just have so many open zones in the middle where Christian Kirk's to be able to eat. I love this pairing. I think this is really, really good. And it also just throws so much shade at Tank Dell, man. This is problematic for him.
There's not a scenario where Tank Dell plays in 2025. There's
I don't think he plays in 20. Yeah, he does. He's probably not going to play in 2025 now that they have Kirk and they have somebody that can be serviceable. They're not going to force Dell back. But I'm just saying long-term career-wise, like multiple disastrous injuries that severely impact your athleticism long-term on a guy that is severely dependent on athleticism. I mean, he weighs 170-ish pounds. And he's like
170 is generous.
Thin, and you just can't. You can't have those injuries, man. Like if you're gonna have that lack of trade of injury, that lack of size is gonna be a problem.
You think this trade means that Stephon Diggs isn't coming back to Houston?
I don't think he's coming back. No, I think he will be gone. I don't think they're gonna re-sign him. I think Diggs wants too much money.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, he didn't look washed by any means last year. He definitely
no, not at all. But he's coming
wasn't the same Stephon Diggs stir. But speaking of Texans trading, they traded their star left tackle Laramie Tunsil and a 4th round pick to the Washington Commanders for 3rd and 7th round picks in 2025 and 2nd and 4th round picks in 2026. Texans also traded former 1st round pick guard Kenyon Green and a 5th round pick to the Eagles for safety CJ Gardner-Johnson and a 6th round pick. And the Eagles weren't done with trades either. They traded their Super Bowl winning quarterback,
that's right,
Kenny Pickett, to the Browns for Dorian Thompson-Robinson and a 5th round pick. I still am a little surprised that the Texans would trade their only good offensive lineman, because that line was trash, but it wasn't Tunsil that was trash.
No, I just don't get it. Like they got rid of Shaq Mason, who was a starter, Laramie Tunsil, like you said, and Kenyon Green, like you said, 3 starting linemen on an offensive line that was bottom 5 in sacks allowed last year. And I will give some credit to the offensive line. CJ Stroud held on the ball way too long, a lot of plays. There were so many times where he missed the deep ball, he missed the timing on that deep ball, and he's just sitting there in the pocket like a statue. There were so many plays where you saw that with Stroud, and it was incredibly frustrating, especially as an offensive lineman of the Texans. I'd be frustrated if your quarterback's not getting rid of the ball in time. But still, they were terrible. CJ Stroud was constantly under pressure, constantly having to run outside the pocket, and he was constantly getting sacked. Getting rid of offensive linemen this good, multiple starters, like you're just asking CJ Stroud to get killed, man. I don't know what you're doing here. And honestly, it benefits Christian Kirk to me. If you're going to have a terrible offensive line that's constantly getting pressure, you're going to get teams sending blitzes at you. You're going to get teams that are sending a lot of pressure at you, saying they have a weak offensive line. Let's take advantage and absolutely kill them. You're going to have Kirk open in the middle. You're going to have Kirk open for dump-off passes. What's not going to happen is you aren't going to have many open opportunities for Nico Collins down the field. And I'm not saying fake Nico Collins. I think he'll be fine. They'll figure it out. But what I'm saying is I think there's going to be a lot of dump-off opportunities, and Kirk is right there for him. So it gives me a bit more confidence in Christian Kirk.
All right. So we got a dynasty question here in the chat, and I think it's a pretty good one. One of them not currently employed by a team. The other one, Aaron Jones, on the older side, but did just sign a 2-year, $20 million deal with the Vikings. So the Freak wants to know, would y'all trade Aaron Jones and Russell Wilson for the 112 in their rookie draft? It is a 14-team PPR Superflex league where you start 11. So pretty deep starting roster.
Mm-hmm.
So Hutch, where are you thinking here? You keeping the aging vets or going with the young buck?
It's really tough, man, because after 2025, Aaron Jones and Russ could both be worth nothing. They both could be worth very little. Like, they could be worth almost nothing. That rookie pick, obviously, it's the 112, and this rookie class isn't incredibly deep. You got some great tight ends, you got some great running backs, but at quarterback and wide receiver, you got very few that you'd want to pick in the first round, in my opinion. You only got a few of each. I'm still going to take that 112, though, man. In Dynasty, I love the rookies. I love that rookie draft, getting those young guys in your roster. I like trading for aspiring assets and getting off of is it despiring? Is that a word? Am I making that up? Aspiring, despiring? That's not a word, is it? I'm messing this up, aren't I?
Declining.
Declining. Okay, declining. Well, there's aspiring, and I was like, despiring. I don't know. I don't know vocabulary, guys. I'm sorry. But declining, I like to trade off and get rid of declining assets before their bottom falls out. And Aaron Jones and Russell Wilson are both players that feel like that time is coming for them. So I like the 112 in this deal.
I have I believe it's a start 11. It might be start 10, super flex league that I'm in with 12 teams. I could not move Aaron Jones for a 3rd round pick. So if you're telling me that you can get a 1st rounder in a deal for him, I'm doing that all day, every day. Because Russ right now truly is not a starting quarterback. He's depth at a quarterback position, sure. But there's a chance that wherever he goes, that team likely drafts a rookie and he's on a short leash because he really did not do much of anything in Pittsburgh last year to inspire any level of confidence at all. So I'm 1,000% making this trade and then, I don't know, probably making some more trades with that 112 and getting somebody else that might buy into some of these players that are coming out in this draft.
Yeah, I don't mind that strategy at all.
Especially because with how deep this running back class is, that might be your next starting running back right there, the 112.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I see Quentin Judkins, who is a phenomenal player, going at like the 108, 109 most drafts, not the 112, but like that's the level of running deepness of this running back class that we're talking about. Like Quentin Judkins, a phenomenal asset, is going that late. Like it's like you're so many good running backs, man.
Oh, yeah, 100%. All right. Let's get into some of these signings now. Let's start at the quarterback position. We already mentioned Sam Darnold to the Seahawks, 3 years, $100.5 million, $55 million guaranteed. And as I mentioned, kind of front loading this, the first year, $37.5 million. So they're already more than 1/3 of this contract is out in the first year. So that's going to lessen the cap hits in those final 2 years, to where if Darnold does bomb with the Seahawks, they have a much easier out. Prior to a lot of the action here on Monday, Matthew Stafford agreed to a restructured contract with the Rams. So he's back in LA. Rams also brought back Jimmy Garoppolo on a 1-year, $4.5 million deal. Cardinals went out and signed Jacoby Brissett from the Patriots. Andy Dalton re-signed for a 2-year deal with the Panthers. I think that's music to Bryce Young's ears. Those two have a really good relationship. The awesome. Giants actually do finally have a quarterback on their roster. They re-signed Tommy DeVito. Tommy Cutlets, baby. Coming back on a 1-year deal. Broncos re-signed Jared Stidham. Nick Mullins goes to the Jaguars on a 2-year deal. Daniel Jones to the Colts. 1 year, $14 million deal. $13.15 million of that is guaranteed. Friendly note from our beloved Joe Zolo, mid-off for the starting spot. So that should be fun.
Yeah. I feel bad for Colts fans, man. This is a rough spot.
Right. It's a rough spot for them. Absolutely. Josh Dobbs goes from the 49ers to the Patriots on Zach Wilson to the Dolphins on a 1-year deal. And on a 2-year, $40 million deal, $30 million of it guaranteed. Ryan points out here, Fields was the QB6 over the first 6 weeks of last year. Great for fantasy that he will get a full year as a starter. Still a little worrisome for Garrett Wilson. So let's start here, Hutch. Mm-hmm. Where are you fitting Justin Fields in your quarterback rankings? And do you think that he can actually be a successful starting quarterback for the New York Jets?
For fantasy, he'll be a top 10 quarterback ranked for me for sure. I mean, Ryan mentioned it, QB6 over the first 6 weeks last year in Pittsburgh. I feel like that was quiet, by the way, too, because there wasn't a lot of passing production from Fields. The Steelers offense was very held back, but Fields was still very good for fantasy. And then we've had stretches in Chicago where, especially, the time with DJ Moore, where he was literally a top 5 quarterback. Like, this dude is good for fantasy because he runs for like 40, 50 yards a game. That's giving you basically a lock. Like, that's basically a touchdown every game, like 40, 50 rushing yards is 4 to 5 points. That's almost a touchdown every game that you're getting just guaranteed for Justin Fields. It gives you such a nice floor, but also such a great ceiling. And given where the Jets are as a team, that you got Breece Hall, you got Braylon Allen, you got Garrett Wilson, you got some weapons here, and you got a team that's just looking for a quarterback, looking for somebody to give them some juice. I think Fields has a lot of opportunity here to try to take this team and do really well with it. Will he be a franchise quarterback? I have my doubts, but will he be good for fantasy for at least this season? Heck yeah. He is absolutely a top 10 quarterback for me, locked in, and he's got to approach like the top 6 for me. He's going to be right there.
So we talked about this a lot leading into 2024 when everybody jumped on board the Anthony Richardson train. And myself, Joe, Ryan, we were 3 that were so far off the Anthony Richardson bandwagon. Everybody wanted to say, oh, the rushing upside. Awesome, cool. Here's the problem. You still have to throw the football to make sure that rushing upside means anything. Justin Fields is not an effective passer of the football. Yes, we have seen him do a lot of great things on the ground with his legs. He has believe he has a 1,000-yard rushing season as a quarterback.
I believe so, yeah.
But it really just kind of boils down to, is Garrett Wilson going to be happy? We've heard the rumors about him wanting a trade. Obviously, Fields is his former quarterback at Ohio State, so I'm sure they probably have a pretty decent relationship. Now that Davante Adams is out, Wilson now becomes the number 1 guy. But Justin Fields is not an accurate passer, and he didn't look like an accurate passer even in Pittsburgh. Yes, it's great that he was, the QB6, right? Because he puts up those rushing yards. I get that. Cool. But then it boils down to the type of offense. Are the Jets going to utilize him to a point like Arthur Smith did, where they can move him around, get him out of the pocket, and let him kind of make those decisions to where he can run or throw? And that's my biggest worry. I don't know that I would have him as high as a top 10. I'm fine with him being like that top 12, top 13, 14 option. But he still needs to show me that he can throw the football effectively in this league, because he hasn't done that to this point. And that's where I'm like cause for pause when it comes to the world of fantasy, because last year showed you actually don't have to throw the football to be effective, right? You don't have to run the football to be effective quarterback in fantasy. There were a lot of quarterbacks in the top 10, top 12 last year that didn't have more than 300 rushing yards. So that tells me that the days of like, oh, I need that elite rushing quarterback just to win in fantasy, they're not really there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to disagree with you here a little bit, Joshua, but to me, I don't need anything more from Fields. Every time he's been on the field, he has dominated for fantasy. I mean, he's been a monster. I mean, he has been inefficient as a passer for sure, and that could affect his long-term job for the Jets, but they're going to give him a chance. It's not like he's competing with Tyrod Taylor, I don't think. Like, they're going to give him the shot to start. They gave him a
Of
2-year,
course.
$40 million deal. They're going to give him the chance to start, and he's going to start plenty of games. I bet he starts all 17. But every time he's on the field, if he struggles as a passer, he's a dominant for fantasy. And I'm going to bet that's what he continues to do. And I want to comment on Ryan's comment, still worrisome for Garrett Wilson. I totally see that side of it. Obviously, it's a question of Justin Fields. Does he throw for 3,000 yards? Like, he might not throw for 3,000 yards in 17 games. That's a realistic outcome. But one thing I will say is that Justin Fields has shown over his career in the NFL that he has a tendency to hyper target his number one player. When you look at 2022, when he played on the field with Darnell Mooney was a target hog that year. He was really, really good when Fields was on the field in 2022. He earned a lot of targets and had a nice streak when Fields was on the field of a lot of fantasy production. He was on pace for almost 1,000 yards. And Mooney's not like a phenomenal player that's like a dominator. So 1,000-yard season for him is pretty good. And then you look at 2023 with DJ Moore. Obviously, when Fields is on the field with DJ Moore, that dude was a top 10 receiver in fantasy, if not a top 5. Like, he was dominating for fantasy football. He was averaging almost not 8-9 targets a game. That's phenomenal. And then when you look at George Pickens, he was at 7+ targets per game. He's at 7+ targets per game when Fields was on the field. And for him being such an inconsistent wide receiver, getting hot-headed all the time, that's a pretty solid number for him. And now looking at what we're looking at in this Jets offense this year, Garrett Wilson is on the Jets, right? We have Garrett Wilson, who's a great wide receiver. Then you have Allen Lazard, who's going to be sent away. Other than those two players, you have no other wide receiver on this team that has ever had a 300-yard season. The Jets might add receivers, but I don't think they have the capabilities to make splashes in the draft. They have so many other positions of need. So if they add somebody, it's going to be a clear-cut wide receiver 2 or secondary option to Garrett Wilson. I think he's going to earn a boatload of targets, get a huge chunk of targets from Justin Fields. And while I don't think, top 5, top 8 upsides there for Garrett Wilson, most likely, I still think there's going to be plenty of fantasy production that we're happy with for Garrett Wilson.
So does the fact that he has a first-time offensive play caller in Tanner Engstrom, I believe his name is, sway you in any way, shape, or form? Engstrom was the former pass game coordinator with the Lions. We obviously know how much of a high-powered offense that was. Mm-hmm. But if he's the pass game coordinator, that really doesn't line up with Justin Fields' strengths.
Yeah, definitely. First year pass game coordinator, you got to get that juice going, got to get the connection going. But honestly, to me, talented players went out, and Garrett Wilson, I believe, is a really talented player. I know some people have doubted Garrett Wilson now that he's been in the league a few years, hasn't had that monstrous season yet. I think he's capable of having that monstrous season. I think he has that talent in him. I think at the end of the day, that's going to win out.
Okay. So I'll end on this note, because going from one quarterback with high rushing upside to another, does Anthony Richardson hold off Daniel Jones and remain the Colts starting quarterback for 2025?
No, he's not going to. He will be benched at some point this year. Okay. And look, I'm just going to say this too. If I will say this, if the Jets brought in a Daniel Jones or someone like that, I'd be saying the same thing about Justin Fields, where he might not have his job the whole season. But they didn't. They brought in Justin Fields to be their guy, and I believe he will start all the games, even if he struggles. Anthony Richardson has shown no growth since college. Absolutely none. Really, and he's done the same thing over and over again. He's been I think, significantly a worse passer than Justin Fields. He completes less than 50% of his passes the majority of his games. He was top 7 last year among all quarterbacks with 100 dropbacks in turnover-worthy play percentage. The dude just puts the ball in dangerous situations. He misses all the easy throws, easy third down conversions. He completely misses them on a regular basis. Like, he's not a starting caliber quarterback. He has not played that way. And Daniel Jones, while we meme him, while we make fun of him, while he was a bust, he's okay enough. He's a veteran presence that can he can work an offense. Anthony Richardson cannot. If the Colts start like 2-5 and Richardson's struggling, they're gonna pull him. Like, I don't think his leash is long. This is year 3.
For what it's worth, these are the 2 worst starting quarterbacks in the NFL over the past couple of seasons. So really, the Colts were smart in not truly bringing in great competition to like push Anthony Richardson, but push him just enough with somebody that has starting NFL experience. So
yeah,
there's that.
I mean, it's a perfect challenge. The Colts are like, okay, if you can't beat Daniel Jones, I'm sorry, we have nothing else we can do for you. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
It's over.
Swing and a
Like,
miss.
That's
Exactly.
kind of how it is at this point. That's basically what the Colts are saying to him.
Exactly. All right, let's move on to the running back position. Not too many big names here. Elijah Mitchell, former 49er, signs a 1-year deal with the Chiefs. Ryan's note, he will be the best running back in the league for 3 plays. Najee Harris to the Chargers, 1 year, $5.25 million, fully guaranteed, does have a max value of $9.25 million. Far cry from the running back deals of last year. I'm just saying. Javonte Williams goes to the Cowboys, 1 year, $3 million. The previously mentioned Aaron Jones re-signs with the Vikings, 2 years, $20 million, $13 million guaranteed. Kenny Gainwell, former Philadelphia Eagle, goes to the Steelers. The Eagles replace Gainwell with with Quadzilla, AJ Dillon, who missed all of last year. I think it's safe to say that the Eagles have the quaddiest backfield in the NFL between
Quad squad,
Saquon,
man. They got it. They got it going.
Dylan, and Jalen Hurts. Like, that is some massive legwork back there, let me tell you. Khalil Herbert signs a 1-year deal with the Colts. And today, Rico Dowdle, 1,000-yard rusher with the Cowboys last year, goes to the Panthers to pair with Chuba Hubbard. We know the situation with Jonathan Brooks, retore his ACL fairly late in the year. I wouldn't expect much of him this year, so I think this is a pretty solid signing for the Panthers, who also released Miles Sanders earlier today, if I'm not mistaken. So,
they did,
let's go to some of the bigger names here. Najee Harris has 4 straight years with 1,000 yards rushing. Can he make it 5 in the running back friendly offense that is the Los Angeles Chargers?
I'm gonna be honest, man. I'm gonna be pretty bullish on Najee Harris heading into next year. I'm gonna be in. I have not been the craziest Najee Harris supporter. I have not been all in on Harris through his career. I liked him as a rookie. I liked seeing the Big Ben, slowing down. I liked seeing that dump off game. I was betting on that when I was drafting him as a rookie. But otherwise, I've been a little more hesitant with him because he doesn't create those explosive plays. He's so big and powerful. The explosive plays aren't really there. I like my running backs to get those explosive plays. Looking at Harris in Los Angeles, I think it's going to be perfect. Jim Harbaugh's physical, hard-headed run scheme where he's just running straight up the middle and just, we're going to beat you because we're stronger than you, is exactly what Najee Harris does, man. He runs straight at the middle, downhill running, and he just bashes through people. I think this is a very comparable situation. Now, I'm not comparing these two as players because the talent level is completely different. But I think this is going to be a similar situation of when we saw Derrick Henry move from Tennessee to Baltimore, in a sense where you will have a terrible offensive line, terrible quarterback play, terrible offensive situation in Tennessee to a great situation in Baltimore. And look what Derrick Henry does. He put up one of his career best seasons. Najee Harris is coming away from a situation in Pittsburgh where you've had terrible quarterback play for years, horrific offensive line play. This offensive line has been a dumpster fire ever since he's gotten there, and a receiving room that has been really filled with a lot of nonsense for the last handful of years. You go to a room with Justin Herbert, who not only is a great passer of the football and threatens downfield. Like, again, I was mentioning Nico Collins. You don't play cover 1 against Justin Herbert. He'll beat you. He'll beat you every time. He'll beat you every time with that. Like, you got to put 2-3 safeties back there or else you're cooked. And you have Justin Herbert also can run the football. He unlocked that a lot last year running the football. He became a threat. They ran a few run options last year, Los Angeles did, and that's a huge threat you got to keep an eye on, which opens a lot of lanes in the run game. And you have an offensive line in Los Angeles that Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman continue to build up, continue to coach up, and it looks like one of the better offensive lines in football, one of the more physical, better offensive lines in the league. I'm really excited to see what Najee Harris does. I think this is the perfect fit for him. I think he could have a top 6 season here. I think it's in his range of outcomes. I mean, he did it as a rookie. I think he could have a top 6 season.
Well, he also did that with 90-something targets.
He did. He had 90-something targets this year. I'm not projecting that. But I just think this is going to be one of his most efficient, most explosive, most fun seasons to watch Najee Harris. I think it's actually be fun to watch him play football this year.
Okay. All right.
I'm
That's an
excited.
interesting take. That's an
Do you not
interesting
like?
take.
Are you disagreeing with me? That's okay if you do. I'm just
Look,
bullish.
I'm not saying that I disagree from the sense that, I hate the move. Like, I do like the move. I think it's a good fit. I think Najee is a very physical runner. The Chargers, that's their brand. That's what they want to do. I just think that his ceiling is capped because they don't throw the football to the running back, right? Like,
Mm.
he needs to put up a Derrick Henry kind of season. He needs to have 1,600 plus rushing yards, 15 plus rushing touchdowns. I would be extremely surprised to see that. I truly would. I feel like we saw something close to that in college, but we haven't seen it in the NFL. And when you go that long without that kind of play, it's a little interesting, hard to kind of jump on board with. I think
Yeah.
my favorite stat of this whole signing is that Najee's new head coach, Jim Harbaugh, has a longer career rush than Najee Harris, who actually plays running back. That's kind of a damning stat to me. I'm just saying.
Sucks, man. That's terrible. That's terrible.
I'm just saying. Just saying.
Yeah.
Not
terrible.
great on that one.
No, that's not good. That's not a good stat.
One signing I would have liked like 2 years ago, Javonte Williams going to Dallas. That was back when Dallas actually had a good offensive line. Obviously, losing Zach Martin doesn't help any, but their offensive line is very much in transition. They ultimately let Rico Dowdle test the market. He signed with Panthers Wednesday, excuse me. What do we think of Javonte here? Like, he was the belle of the ball, so to speak, when he came out of North Carolina. Obviously, injuries kind of slowed him. Really didn't get back on track with Denver. Do we think this can be a resurgent year where he can sort of regain his value a little bit?
This is really, really tough, man, because Javonte Williams coming out of college, I absolutely adored the kid. I absolutely loved him. I thought he was a phenomenal prospect. I thought he was going to be a hit in the NFL. And after his rookie season, it really looked like it was going to happen, man. He looked phenomenal as a rookie. He made some crazy good plays. And then he had that knee injury, blew up knee, and he has not come back the same ever since. Last year was the second season off that injury, and he still looks like he just wasn't creating yards. He did everything the system asked him to do and created nothing else. Like, that was what Javonte Williams was last year. And the problem is Sean Payton can run a good system. That offense was pretty good last year. Dallas, on the other hand, you have a questionable head coach, a questionable coaching staff. You have a very questionable offensive line that we don't trust. You have a quarterback in Dak Prescott who's had plenty of injuries throughout his career. We don't know how he's going to come back off his latest one. This is a very questionable situation. If he ended up somewhere like a really good, like if he went to Los Angeles to be their starter, I'd be a bit more interested because you have a better system there that might be able to work with him. But if Javonte is like what he was in Denver and he's going to this situation, this is going to be terrible. Like, this is going to be an absolute disaster. And the Dallas Cowboys have a similar season last year, except they don't have a Rico Dowdle to save them. They're just absolutely cooked. So I really hope that the Cowboys aren't planning Javonte Williams to be their guy. I really hope that's not the plan. I mean, as an Eagles
It's a
fan,
1 year, $3 million deal. Like, I would imagine they'll probably spend a draft pick on a running
I would
back
imagine they
at
do
minimum.
too. But this is the same thing we said last year about this team. And look what they did.
Facts.
They did not spend a draft pick on a running back. I mean, Jared Jones was talking up Jonathan Brooks, how much he loved them, and the Panthers traded up over them to get him. That was absolutely hilarious. I could not stop laughing when I saw the Panthers trade up to get him.
What
That
the
was so
Cowboys
funny.
do.
That was one of my favorite moments ever. So good. But yeah, overall, I'm not excited about this. If he were to end up being the lead back for the Cowboys, unless he's going like in the 12th round, I'm not interested. Like, I just don't think that's
Yeah, I think, and honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if he does go that
Yeah,
late.
no, people are out. People are done.
People were out on Rico. They were obviously out on Zeke for good reason.
Yeah.
I mean, they found some decent value in Rico, but again, like Javonte was never somebody that had a lot of long speed anyway. Like, he wasn't a big breakaway guy. He broke a lot of tackles, which that was always kind of his calling card. So again, like, if Dallas finds a way, like in this draft class, to kind of, start rebuilding that offensive line, like rebuilding the trenches, like, I mean, seeing what Philly has done over the years and getting them to a Super Bowl, like that seems to be the blueprint that a lot of teams want to follow. And the Cowboys were kind of doing it before Philly was. They just couldn't win with it. That was more so their problem. So I think if they can fix the line, Williams is intriguing. But as it stands right now, like I'm with you. He's a 10th, 11th, 12th round guy for me. And he's a dart throw. Is kind of like RB4-ish, so to speak.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that. Quick dynasty question before we get into the wide receivers. Caesar, would you trade Chuba Hubbard for Zach Charbonnet and the 201? It's a 10-team PPR league.
Ooh, that's a difficult one because Chuba's got that contract now. That contract really establishes him as like he's going to be a guy for Carolina. And I know Jonathan Brooks' outlook is concerning, but they're still like they're going to give him a chance. He's going to come back in 2026. They're going to give him a shot. And that kid coming out of college, I absolutely loved him. I thought he was phenomenally talented. I thought he was incredibly explosive, especially as a receiver. And if we were to eventually get to the point in the next year or two where it's Chuba Hubbard just, ground and pounds, running the football, and you have Jonathan Brooks mostly taking a lot of the receiving work, incredibly capped for Chuba Hubbard and his upside in fantasy. Charbonnet is a solid back, and he's a great handcuff to Kenneth Walker if Walker ever goes down, which he has proven he can do a lot in his career so far in the NFL. And then you have the 201, which in this draft is going to get you a really good running back. Like, you're going to get a really good running back prospect that might be better than Chuba. And especially in a 10-teamer, like it's the 11th pick. It's basically the 111. I think I'm taking this deal. It's really, I think
I'm taking this deal as well.
It's a fair offer, but I think it's a deal I'm taking.
This is kind of the sell high moment on Chuba. They didn't bring in a ton of competition. Like, yes, Dowdle ran for 1,000 yards, but as my co-host Joe Zolo likes to say, what's 1,000 yards? 50-something yards a game? Like, it's not really much of anything. So I get that. Charbonnet, I'm really interested to see because I do think that Kenneth Walker is the better back overall. I think he's the most explosive. And I think, truthfully, he can have a lot more success in this Clint Kubiak system over Charbonnet. But as you mentioned, Hutch, we haven't really seen Kenneth Walker remain healthy for a full season. And that gives Charbonnet an opportunity. He was a much more efficient back last year versus Kenneth Walker. Getting the 201 here, that could be one of the top wide receivers in this class. That could also be one of the better running backs in this class. Could also be one of the elite tight end options in this draft class. So, to me, I don't think you're taking obviously a big downgrade from the running back position unless you ultimately use that 201 on one of these young running backs coming out, because you're probably going to find 8 to 10 starters out of this running back class. Like, I firmly believe that this is a very deep class.
You could argue the same with the tight end position. It's probably like 6 or like guys that are like, these guys are going to be starters.
Yeah. This is definitely one of those kind of tear down opportunities. Like I said, I don't love losing Chuba. I think if you're kind of in that win now mode, maybe you hang on to Chuba, but I think it's close enough that even if you are in a win now mode, you can flip that 201 for a piece that can help you this year if need be. So that's kind of where I would stay with that. So, all right, let's get into the free agent wide receivers that inked themselves some new deals this week. Josh Palmer to the Bills, 3-year, $36 million, $18 million guaranteed. The man who only scores touchdowns until you want him to score a touchdown. Nick Westbrook-Akine to the Dolphins, 2 years, $6.5 million. The Mac Hollins to the Patriots, 2 years, $8.4 million. DeAndre Hopkins to the Ravens on a 1-year, $6 million deal. Ryan points out he was the wide receiver 33 while he was with the Chiefs. Now goes to a team that throws the ball 7 fewer times per game. D-Hop is not even a top 50 wide receiver anymore. Interesting call there. De'Ami Brown to the Jaguars, 1-year, $10 million deal. Hollywood Brown re-signs with the Patriots, 1 year, $11 million.
I mean the Chiefs.
More suckers bait for Ryan. Yep. What did I say?
You mean with the
Chiefs? What?
You said Patriots.
Yeah. Oh, I saw Joe next to it. That's fine. Yeah.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Hollywood Brown to the Chiefs. Yes. Sorry. I just want the Patriots to get some wide receiver help to save my Drake.
I don't get what they're doing, man. They're going to take
Devontae Turpin re-signs with the Cowboys, 3 years, $18 million. Darius Slayton re-signs with the Giants, 3 years, $36 million. They couldn't give that kind of money to Saquon Barkley, but they'll give it to a wide receiver 4.
That
Unbelievable.
made me chuckle, man. That was wild. That came out of left field, man. I was like, wow. All right. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
That was
Unbelievable.
tough. That was tough to
Chris
watch.
Godwin re-signs with the Bucs, 3 years, $66 million, $44 million of it guaranteed. Reportedly, he left about $20 million on the table from the Patriots to stay with Tampa.
Whew.
Find that very interesting.
Wow. I never saw that.
Davante Adams, after getting released by the Jets, goes back to California, signs a 2-year, $46 million deal with $26 million guaranteed with the Los Angeles Rams, who officially released Cooper Kupp today.
Mm-hmm.
They also re-signed Tutu Atwell, 1 year, $10 million. And former Ram Demarcus Robinson goes to the rival San Francisco 49ers on a 2-year, $9.5 million deal with $6 million guaranteed. Let's start here, Hutch. Do you like the Puka Nacua and Davante Adams pairing better? Or do you wish Cooper Kupp had stayed in LA?
Well, I think for Davante Adams' fantasy value, this is really good. This is really, really good. I mean, you have Matthew Stafford, who's a phenomenal quarterback. And yes, I know he's older, but he's still a precise passer. And he's someone, like I was mentioning with CJ Stroud, where timing throws and just knowing where he needs to put the ball for his receiver to get it is everything for him. And Davante Adams is this kind of receiver. He's a one-step go kind of guy. He breaks man coverage. He finds the spots, soft spots in the zone. Stafford's going to pick defenses apart with Davante Adams. And I know I'm praising Davante Adams right now. I see no threat to Puka Nacua. These two are going to both be really, really good assets for fantasy. I'm very confident in both moving forward in this Rams offense. I think Stafford could be a really great sleeper in fantasy as well. This is a heck of a receiving duo to work with.
No, I agree. Puka, I believe, in points per game was the wide receiver 3 in fantasy last year.
Two, and it wasn't even
that
low.
high.
Like
okay.
he was because he was like, it was like Jamar Chase, then Puka Nacua kind of in his own tier, and then it was Justin Jefferson, I think, after him. I'm pretty sure like the points per game spread out basically that way.
Yeah, he was up there. So was Chris Godwin up there.
Yeah, Chris Godwin too. Yeah,
and Davante Adams had a phenomenal season. He was a top 15 wide receiver as well, and he's 32 years old. So clearly he's not really slowing down, and the Rams don't think he's slowing down. So do you think that both of these guys finish in the top 15 again this year?
Puka, yes. I'm still ranking Puka as like a top 5 wide receiver. Davante Adams, top 15 is a great line. If I had to bet right now, I think I would say he's just outside, like wide receiver 16. Like that's where I'm probably going to rank him, but that's a great line. Top 15 is probably where you'd expect him to be, like right in that range.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Chris Godwin, because I think it's really interesting that he turned down that kind of money from the Patriots, who clearly need all the wide receiver help that they can get. He would have been the clear number one there, catching balls from Drake May. Decides to stay in Tampa, take less money. Obviously built a really good relationship with Baker, and Mike Evans is still there. Godwin coming off the ACL, offensive coordinator gone, new face in town. Do we get the same Chris Godwin from last year, even though the guy calling the offensive plays is gone? I mean, I think there's a lot to kind of dissect with this move and decision by Godwin to stay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the decision to stay was mostly a vibes thing. I mean, he's been in Tampa his whole career. This vibe in Tampa right now with Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans hitting his 1,000-yard streak again, it just feels like a great vibe. And I feel like he turned down the money so he can stay. It just felt like a family thing to him. I feel like that's the approach here for Chris Godwin. That's the mindset. And looking at the contract, I love this contract for him, because I was looking at a couple weeks ago, I was talking about Chris Godwin on my podcast, and I was like, man, like, I don't know how I'm going to feel about him next year for fantasy, because he's coming off that broken ankle injury, and we don't know how he's going to look off of that. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers giving him this kind of money for this long shows me that they have full confidence that his rehab is going very well and he's going to be just fine. Like, I have no concerns about Chris Godwin anymore. I mean, maybe slight, but knowing that it exists, his broken ankle did exist. But Tampa is showing us that they're totally fine. Like, they have no concerns about Chris Godwin at all. And as a result, offensive coordinator or not, this is still a fantastic player. This is still the same quarterback who knows how to use Chris Godwin. I'm in. I think Chris Godwin will be, in that top 15 wide receiver range as Evans continues to climb for 1,000 yards.
All right. So obviously I didn't read off a ton of big names on this list.
No.
If there's any one of them that you think could be fantasy relevant,
Interesting. Yeah.
who are you tapping from this list?
Hollywood Brown, for sure. With Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice seeming to not know how to follow the law, you need to keep an eye on Hollywood Brown because if though, oh, actually, no, I'm going to correct myself. Xavier Worthy was actually dropped of all the charges, and it actually seemed like it was a misunderstood kind of situation. I'm sorry about that. But it seems like these two, I mean, at least Rashee Rice, could face serious suspension from the NFL. Keep an eye on Hollywood Brown because if you have that, Hollywood Brown could be a great wide receiver in fantasy. He's only 28 years old, and he's a speed demon, man. He's got some serious speed. I feel like it's really underrated how fast he is if he's fully healthy. I think that dude could be fantasy relevant. But I also just want to, I had to kind of shout out the Darius Slayton contract. That was, I could not stop laughing, dude. I saw that. I was just like, this is unbelievable. I was like, that I can't even believe it, dude. So good.
The Giants have no idea how to run a football team. I mean, clearly we knew that after watching Hard Knocks from last year.
Oh, so bad. Like, everyone knew. Like, they had no idea what they're doing. I don't understand how they have not got fired yet. Joe Schoen, man, I'm sorry.
They will after this year. They will.
Yeah, they have to, man.
The one for me is Josh Palmer. I liked him a lot
that's a good one.
In Los Angeles. My biggest thing is like he's not a one. Truly, he fits best as a 3, like a deep threat in an offense, very similar to De'Ami Brown. But like, I feel like after all those years with having a legit wide receiver 1 with Stephon Diggs, like it's just put a sour taste in the Bills' mouth that they just don't ever want a true number 1 that can take over games. Like I like Khalil Shakir, he's a supporting piece. I like Josh Palmer, he's a supporting piece. They don't have anybody that can take over games as a pass catcher.
No.
And they just shelled out a lot of money to Josh Allen, giving him a 6-year, $330 million extension with $250 million guaranteed. Like they're basically saying, Josh, you're going to make our wide receivers great. I don't think that's always going to be the case. So they really need to start looking for a legitimate wide receiver in the draft and get him on a cheap contract. But I digress. I do think that there's a world where Josh Palmer can be a top 36 wide receiver with the Bills.
Yeah, Josh Palmer in Los Angeles is always great when injuries came up, man. When injuries came up, when he needed to fill in, he filled in really well. And honestly, I'll just mention to Josh Palmer, I think this is a really big threat to Keon Coleman. Honestly, you mentioned Josh. He's a great deep threat. Like he's someone that can work downfield. He's someone that can make those big play catches downfield. Keon Coleman, like as big as he is, he struggled with that immensely in college, and he struggled with that immensely in this first season in the NFL. His contested catch rate was terrible. His separation was terrible. I'm being honest. Like I hate Keon Coleman, dude. I don't understand. I never understood him. I never got it. I never hooked on. I was never a fan. When the Bills picked him in the second round, I was like, this is a waste of time. I really didn't understand Keon Coleman, man. And I think this Josh Palmer news is even more trouble for him.
Yeah, I think I have one dynasty share of Keon Coleman just for shits and giggles.
Never. I know how.
I also have Malik Neighbors from that draft class. I have Marvin Harrison Jr. from that draft class.
There you
go. I'm okay there. All right, let's get into the tight ends here. Mike Gesicki re-signs with the Cincinnati Bengals. 3-year deal, $25.5 million, $12 million in 2025. Ryan puts a good note in here that Gesicki, after week 12, was the tight end 10, and all of those games were played with a healthy Jamar Chase and T. Higgins.
Yeah.
It's a good fit. We know he'll be a solid streaming option again. I don't hate it, but obviously, the moment that T. Higgins gets hurt, Mike Gesicki to the moon, baby. Hunter Long to the Jaguars, 2 years, $5 million. Zach Ertz re-signs with the Commanders, 1 year, $6.25 million. Durham Smythe, former Dolphin, to the Bears on a 1-year deal. Tommy Tremble re-signs with the Panthers, 2 years, $16 million. Juwan Johnson re-signs with the Saints, 3 years, $30.75 million, $21.25 million guaranteed. Luke Farrell to the 49ers, 3 years, $20.25 million, $11 million guaranteed. If you don't know who that is, I don't blame you. It pays to be a blocking tight end. It truly does. And of course, the recently released Evan Engram found a home very quickly and gets to play the Joker role for one Sean Payton and the Broncos, 2 years, $23 million, $16.5 million guaranteed. I had this question in here prior to the signing, Hutch, but I think the answer is probably Evan Engram. Do you see any of these signings that scream top 10 fantasy tight end?
Evan Engram screams top 5. To me, I think he absolutely has that upside. I mean, he's finished that twice in 2022 and 2023. He was a top 5 10 in both those seasons. Just had a down year this past year with a lot of injuries and a lot of frustration with this offense, with the injuries at quarterback to Trevor Lawrence and Mac Jones. That switch was frustrating. Looking at what Evan Engram could do here, you said the Joker role, and I wouldn't take it that far. I don't think Evan Engram has.
He's athletic enough that he can be that.
He's very athletic. I think he could be used in a lot of creative ways, with jet sweeps, a lot of screen passes, a lot of fun ways. I wouldn't want him throwing the football, though. I wouldn't want him throwing the football like Taysom Hill was in Sean Payton's offense, but I think there's a lot of creativity you can do with Evan Engram. And also, when you look at the Denver Broncos team last year, like, they desperately needed Evan Engram. And I'll say that because when you look at their tight ends last year, Josh, I don't know if you know this, there are 3 tight ends that caught passes for them. I can't remember their names right now. I know one of them is Adam Troutman.
Adam Troutman was one of them.
Adam Troutman. Their 3 yardages on the season combined for 455 yards. There were 26 tight ends that outdid that individually in 2024. That's how bad their tight end room was. They couldn't do anything with their tight end room. And then you have their leading slot target player was it was Deuce. No. There's something Devon. I don't remember his name right now. What's that? Devon Vele. There you go. Devon Vele. Yeah, sorry. Devon Vele was with 34 targets. Like, they just didn't use a slot last year. They didn't use their tight end position last year. You needed an Evan Engram who is a tight end that can absolutely dominate in the slot position. He's just a ginormous slot receiver who's incredibly athletic. And like you mentioned a little bit, he can be using that Joker role, given handoffs, given screen passes. And he's the clear-cut number 2 option on this team right now. I mean, he beats out Marvin Mims. He'll beat out Devon Vele. He'll beat out the tight ends on this team. The only player he'll be behind is Courtland Sutton. So when you have a tight end with a quarterback in Bo Nix, and he's the number 2 option on this team, like, that screams top 6 fantasy tight end, especially with the athleticism you got.
I'm with you. My only worry with this offense, Sean Payton has shown these last few years in Denver, much same that he did in New Orleans when he first got there. He does not need a number 1 target. He will spread the football around, and Bo Nix has shown that he's very good at doing that. So
he's fine,
much like any other tight end starting in fantasy, Evan Engram might be a bit of a headache, but I don't disagree. Top 6 is very much in the realm of possibilities. All right, a couple more notable moves before we kind of wrap things up. Bears need to protect Caleb Williams. He was sacked, I believe, over 70 times last year. Not great for your number 1 overall pick. They acquired Jonah Jackson in a trade with the Rams. For those unfamiliar, Jonah Jackson used to be starting guard with the Lions when Ben Johnson was the offensive coordinator. All-pro guard Joe Thuney was acquired from the Chiefs, and they signed a former Falcons center Drew Dahlman to a 3-year, $42 million deal. So they've rebuilt the interior of this line. How are we feeling about Caleb Williams now heading into 2025?
Chicago, you got to hang the banner 2025 offseason champs along with the 2024 and 2023. Like, you guys are the champs of the offseason yet again. Now it's time to do something in the regular season. I'm excited. I've always been excited about Caleb Williams since he's come out. Heading into his second season, I've been excited. To me, obviously, he struggled as a rookie. There was a lot of inconsistency, but he showed enough flashes. He showed enough flashes of talent to the point where it's like, yeah, that guy's special. He made some throws that very few quarterbacks could make in this league. Like that, I don't know if you remember this with me, Josh. That one throw to DeAndre Swift where he's running down to the sideline and just heaves it up. Like, that throw was like, that was Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Lamar. Like, I mean, there's no other quarterbacks in that league that make that throw. Like, there's very few. Like, he made a bunch of those plays this year. He can scramble. He can work outside the pocket. He can run, which for fantasy we absolutely love. I'm in for the breakout. I'm in for Rome Odunze year 2. I love DJ Moore. Hopefully they add another wide receiver to replace Keenan Allen if Keenan Allen is to leave. Cole Kmet's a good tight end. And you got an offensive line now that can really protect and give Caleb Williams time to throw the football. I'm excited for Caleb Williams even more. And again, hang that banner, Chicago. Hopefully you get like a regular season champion something soon. instead
Hutch,
of
I'm
offseason
just
champs.
very disappointed in you for saying that Cole
Oh,
Kmet's
Cole Kmet's a good tight end. Yeah, I knew you'd get on me about that one. Cole Kmet's a good tight end, bro. Cole Kmet's a very solid tight end. Don't hate, bro. He's a solid tight end. There is nothing wrong with Cole Kmet.
Oh man. Max Crosby signs a 3-year extension with the Raiders, $106.5 million, $91.5 million guaranteed. And just because he can, Myles Garrett said, you know what? I don't want out of Cleveland because you're going to pay me $40 million a year. $123 million guaranteed, becomes the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. They are just like, they're fucking over Cincinnati so bad right now. And Cincinnati is just like, what are they doing? Waiting
and
to
Dallas
sign all of
with
these
Micah.
people? And same thing. Yeah, 100%. Like Dallas should have gotten this deal done sooner, right?
Yeah, well, Cincinnati's
now
doing it themselves. They never signed their plays, and then they went and signed Mike Gesicki to a 3-year deal.
Trey
Like, what are you doing,
Hendrickson
bro?
wants a new deal. He's already asked to be traded. He has 1 year left. Jamar Chase is playing on the franchise tag. He wants to be the highest paid non-quarterback. But this also helps reset the edge market too. You know, with Micah Parsons up for a big extension, TJ Watt up for a big extension. You can make a case that all of these guys are defensive player of the year worthy. And it's going to be a horse race at that point to see who gets paid next. So and the Vikings do bring in a couple of interior linemen as well to help protect their rookie, who unfortunately did not play last year, JJ McCarthy. They brought in Will Fries, 5-year, $88 million deal, and center Ryan Kelly, 2-year, $18 million deal. So, Hutch, we will end on this. Where do you see JJ McCarthy finishing amongst fantasy quarterbacks in 2025?
Look, I like, before I say his fantasy rank, I think for the NFL purposes, he's actually going to be really successful. I'm excited about JJ McCarthy. You know, Kevin O'Connell I know he hasn't been able to play, but you can still teach him a lot, even though he's not able to get on the field. You can teach him a lot about the playbook, teach him a lot about, you know, how the offense works. I think Kevin O'Connell's going to do a great job of working with him. He did a great job with Sam Darnold. You have Justin Jefferson. You have Jordan Addison. You have TJ Hutchinson. You have a great offensive line, a great defense, going to keep you in games. I think JJ McCarthy is going to have a very comfortable situation where a lot of success can be had. Now, keeping a quarterback comfortable with this kind of situation doesn't always mean superior fantasy production. Like we saw times even with Sam Darnold, who put up it was like 4,300, 4,400 yards season, you know, almost like 30 plus touchdowns. He even had times in fantasy where it wasn't there. Like because the defense just won them the game, or Aaron Jones had 100 plus rushing yards. He won them the game. Like he didn't need Sam Darnold throw 30 plus times, 40 plus times. You can just sit back and let Aaron Jones and that defense do the work. And I think there'll be plenty of those for JJ McCarthy. So there's going to be some inconsistency. And obviously he's, playing his first season in the NFL. We can't expect him to know everything yet. But I think he'll absolutely be in that QB2 conversation where maybe in a good matchup down the stretch, you could stream him in some weeks. I think there's got to be success here for this offense.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think anytime you have weapons like Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, if you're not in that top 15 conversation, you're probably not a very good quarterback. So, but I think JJ McCarthy has a good head on his shoulders. I think he's going to fit really well with Kevin O'Connell and what that system wants to do and accomplish. I'm excited for McCarthy. I have a couple of dynasty shares of him, and I'm
excited.
I'm licking my chops.
Yeah.
I'm a little excited about that.
Yeah. And also, he played in Michigan with Jim Harbaugh, like a pro-ready offense, and he sat for a year behind Sam Darnold and learned everything. Like, I think he's ready, man. I think he's going to come out and do really well.
I agree. All right, Hutch, and that will do it. Remind the good folks on YouTube and across all of our podcast platforms where they can find you and everything you are working on.
All right, y'all. Thank you, Joshua, so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate you. Thank you to all the people on the YouTube for commenting, watching, and for anyone watching or listening on audio after this live stream has gone. We really greatly appreciate you. Y'all can follow me on Twitter at HutchinsonB_FF. You can find all my content from there. Check out Hutch Coming in Clutch, my podcast dropping every Thursday. We're going through the free agency moves right now. So if you want to hear more analysis from me on the free agency and on the trades, go check that out. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll be talking about all the news, and just check out my work for Footballguys. I've been doing a lot of things over there, videos on the social media and articles on the website about free agency and trades as well. So go check all of those out on the Footballguys site. And again, thank you all so much for tuning in.
All right, next week, It's our annual intro to Dynasty episode.
Yes.
We're going to be talking all things Dynasty, just getting all these degenerates that love fantasy football and NFL and being like, hey, let's try something you haven't done before. But it's okay if you have already started playing Dynasty. There's going to be a lot of fun tidbits and stuff from our special guests to be determined. But it's going to be a lot of fun. Ryan and Joe should be back 9 p.m. every Wednesday here. No Punt Intended on Club Fantasy's YouTube channel. Find us on Twitter, obviously, all the socials at Club Fantasy FFL, the URL, clubfantasyffl.com. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're continually growing. And of course, this is that time of year when more shows start popping up. So you definitely don't want to miss those. For Ryan at the Fantasy 5 and Joe at Joe_Zolo, who could not be here today, you get me at the one Hudsonian. Be sure to follow all of us. And of course, above all, Club Fantasy FFL and Women of Fantasy Football. That's at women_FF. Always a lot of fun stuff that we're doing with the ladies. Just subscribe, follow along. It's all good times. Defense wins championships. Offense wins fantasy football. We'll see everybody next week. Hutch, thank you so much for joining us, buddy. Peace out, y'all.